Okay, serious games. What is a serious game and how does it differ from games we're used to that we play normally on our phones or on the computer? Specifically, a serious game, its primary intention is either to provide some sort of training, like maybe with a flight simulator or a medical simulator, where a surgeon has special controllers and is practicing like a laparoscopic surgery on a patient instead of practicing on a living person. Or the examples we'll detail later on try to mimic a normal game, and they're set up so that scientists can derive useful information from those games. An important delineation is that, while you might learn useful skills in an entertainment-based game, maybe you picked up leadership skills for managing your World of Warcraft clan. That's not that game's primary intention, and every user's not going to get that same experience. With a serious game, its primary purpose is something more practical.
Alright, Planet Hunters. In 2010, Zooniverse released the original Planet Hunters 1.0 to help enlist the public's help in sorting through the massive amount of data from NASA's Kepler spacecraft. The Kepler spacecraft monitors thousands of stars a day and measures their light output, among many other things. They enlisted the public's help to look at the light output and search for drops in the light that were consistent. They wanted to find a pattern to it. That pattern helped us find undiscovered planets around these stars. The problem being that these types of pattern recognitions couldn't really be done by a machine. They needed people to do it. They didn't have enough researchers to just sit at a computer all day long and stare at the material. So they thought, let's make a game out of this.
Yeah.
So what the user does is they look at a graph of 30 days of worth of material from the Kepler spacecraft of a specific star. They analyze that data and then they highlight at certain points where there may be certain irregular but yet still patterns, stuff that's from the norm. And then once they've identified that, if the evidence supports that there might be a planet there, a researcher investigates it further. If the user actually did discover a planet, not only do they get their name in the scientific journal that will mention the discovery of that planet, but they might even get to name the planet themselves, which would be pretty great. It's definitely some motivation to do some work. In their first round, they had about 300,000 volunteers participate. They discovered some coordinates for potential planets, and they even made several confirmed observations. It was primarily marketed to 8th to 10th grade science classes, so they were able to participate, which tells you that these types of products, while this one wasn't so much of a game, really anyone could participate in. A layman could join in and help solve a problem. So it's a great example of that.
The next game we'll look at is called Reversing the Odds, developed by Cancer Research UK. It was developed to help this research group parse through basically slides of tumor biopsies to see if they were malignant or not. The progression from, it's very similar to Planet Hunters in that the actual research component of this game is basically just looking at a slide and recognizing a pattern and indicating whether it's a positive result or not, which is simple enough for anyone to do. To try to improve upon that model, they've built up a mini game around this, wherein you get points and you get to progress in the mini game by completing this research component. Again, the idea is to incentivize people to keep playing this game and to continue to contribute to research.
Alright, the Impossible line. Possible Line was a game that was developed by Chilingo and was a successful game on the iOS, Android, and Amazon marketplace. It's a regular game, people were playing it, and then Cancer Research UK approached them and wanted to incorporate something into this existing successful game that could assist them with their research. So the difference being here is instead of creating a standalone game or a standalone process, they wanted to take an existing game with existing mechanics and modify it or add to it to be able to assist with their research. So what Chilingo did is they added a separate portion of the game where the user once again is identifying patterns, highlighting certain parts of interest, and this time in a DNA genoming sequence, and then they earn in-game currency so they can continue to play the regular game that they've been enjoying. The difference being here is that they took an established game and added to it. So now that we've looked at some examples of games or processes that are of more of a serious nature, let's talk about some of the issues that they have. One of the biggest ones being that all of these revolve around there is a massive amount of data that needs sorted through, and they need bodies to do it. They need users, they need people to sort through them. Most of these processes are a little too complicated to automate, but they're still simple enough that anyone can participate in them. So that being said, needing lots of users, what we've seen when we've looked at the examples here is really these games haven't been that popular. On the Android marketplace, Reverse the Odds only has about 10,000 downloads. Impossible Line, which was a game before they even added in the research element, only had about 50,000. Now while Planet Hunters had about 300,000 volunteers, that was very specifically marketed to science courses, so we're not counting that. But so if we take the most popular game that we had, Possible Line, about 50,000 users. If we compare that to some of the most popular games on the app marketplace right now, that amount of user base is almost nothing. The two most popular games on the marketplace right now, we have Candy Crush and Clash of Clans. Candy Crush has 500 million users all on its own. Clash of Clans has another 100 million. So with potentially 600 million users just playing those two games on an almost daily basis, the biggest problem is we've got a lot of data to sort through and we don't have many people right now. We need to make it more popular, make it more entertaining. Or we need to connect with those more popular tools that are out there. So if something was done just like with Impossible Line, where they kind of added this little side piece onto it to earn in-game credits, if something like that was done with, let's use Candy Crush for example, it's like, okay, well you could either pay more money into the game because it's what's called freemium, meaning you get to play a little bit and then either your game time is limited or your in-game resources are limited, and they're based on a kind of time reset unless you spend the money in the game to renew those resources. But if you added a separate element of, well, how about you help us sequence this genome, or look at this biopsy slide and tell us how many cancer cells are there. If that earned in-game credit, not only users would probably go for that because instead of spending money, they would be also helping a cause and earning something in the game, so they would be incentivized. But also, potentially, the corporations that run these games could also receive tax credits or some type of other benefit for assisting in this type of research. That's one solution to the problem of there's a lot of data and there's not a lot of people to sort through it.